Welcome once again to our reading of Why the Cross. And we're going to be looking and thinking about the proof and the meaning. The big words have revealed the most amazing promises, but how can we know that they are true and relevant to us today? The answer lies in the earth-shattering truth that on the third day after he died and was buried, Jesus rose from the dead. A cross with a human body hanging on it completely misrepresents the Christian message. The symbol of Christianity is an empty cross, because the Bible's glorious message is that Jesus is alive today, having triumphed gloriously over sin and death. As C.S. Lewis put it, Jesus has forced open a door that has been locked since the death of the first man. He has met, fought, and beaten the king of death. Everything is different because he has done so. This is the beginning of a new creation. A new chapter in cosmic history has opened. I have laid out the evidence for this stupendous truth elsewhere. Here are some of the obvious pointers. 1. Jesus undoubtedly died on the cross. Theories that he was buried while still alive and somehow recovered full health and strength again are absurd. 2. Not even his worst enemies denied that by Sunday morning, his tomb was empty. 3. If for some strange reason the Roman or Jewish authorities had removed the body from the tomb, they would have produced it as soon as Jesus' followers claimed that he was alive again, and the Christian church would have collapsed on the spot. 4. As there was an armed guard of Roman soldiers at the tomb, Jesus' followers could not have stolen the body, nor would they have wanted it to be, as it was buried safely in a friend's grave. 5. Before Jesus rose from the dead, his followers hid behind locked doors for fear of the Jews, John 20:19. Yet a few weeks later they risked persecution, imprisonment, torture, and even death because they had seen Jesus alive again. People sometimes die for something they believe to be true, even if it can be shown that it is not. But nobody is prepared to die for something they know to be false, especially if they concocted the lie. 6. 6 independent witnesses record Jesus' appearing after his death in 11 separate incidents over a period of 40 days. On one occasion, over 500 saw him at the same time. And when the Apostle Paul recorded this, well over half of them were still alive and could confirm the fact. 1 Corinthians 15:6. 7. The Christian Church is the largest religious body the world has ever known, over 2 billion and growing by the thousands every day. And no other group, religious or otherwise, has made a greater contribution to the well-being of humankind. Yet the Church is not based on the moral example Jesus set, nor on his death, but on his resurrection. For 2,000 years, this has been its driving force and the only explanation for its existence. The first Christian church was known as the Way, Acts 9:2. But if Jesus had remained in the grave, the way would have become a dead end. As the American preacher D. James Kennedy put it, the Grand Canyon wasn't caused by an Indian dragging a stick, and the Christian church wasn't created by a myth. The Bible has many convincing proofs of the resurrection of Jesus. But what does it mean? The Bible's first answer is that Jesus was declared to be the Son of God in power by his resurrection from the dead. Romans 1:4. His resurrection did not make Jesus the Son of God, as he has always been so. It proved that he was. It was a declaration of his deity. It showed him to be everything he claimed to be. Before Jesus died, his deity had been veiled by his humanity, so that, in spite of his character, his teaching and his miracles, he was in many ways no different from others. His resurrection changed everything, and his divine power over death proved that he was exactly who he claimed to be. When he invited the disciple, ever since known as Doubting Thomas, to examine the wounds caused by his crucifixion so as to confirm that he had indeed risen, Thomas was convinced and cried out, "My Lord and my God," John 20:28. Yet his resurrection also proved that his death was not a defeat, but a glorious victory. About a year before his death, 3 of his disciples were given a glimpse of his divine glory, and Jesus spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Luke 9:28 through 36. Nobody speaks of accomplishing their death, but Jesus did. His death did not conclude his life, it crowned it. Although he was crucified by the hands of lawless men, his death was according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. Acts 2:23. Far from being something over which God had no control, or a knee-jerk reaction to an unforeseen crisis, it was something he had planned before the foundation of the world. 1 Peter 1:20. This explains why, as he was dying, Jesus cried out, "It is finished." John 19:30. This was not a terrified cry of defeat, but a triumphant cry of victory. It meant mission accomplished, not mission abandoned. Immediately prior to his arrest and execution, he told his disciples, "The hour is come for the Son of Man to be glorified," and went on to say, "For this purpose I have come to this hour." John 12:23. In his death he achieved exactly what God the Father had sent him into the world to do. John 17:4. Death did not annihilate him. It glorified him in what he achieved. But how can we be sure of this? How do we know the price Jesus paid was accepted and the debt paid? Many years ago in Britain, there were debtors' prisons where those who could not pay what they owed were held under arrest. If someone had agreed to stand as a guarantor for the debtor, and the debtor could not be found, the guarantor could be jailed in his place. If you had been the debtor and had left the country owing a large sum of money, your guarantor would have been jailed until the debt was cleared. If you returned and saw your guarantor walking the street as a free man, you would know that the debt you had incurred had been paid in full on your behalf. The illustration is not perfect, but the main point is clear. Jesus was imprisoned by death on behalf of those in whose place he was acting. But when he had paid sin's penalty in full, God raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for death to keep its hold on him. Acts 2:24. The one who paid the debt was released from the prison of death. In the original language used, Jesus' last cry, "It is finished," is just one word, tetelestai, a word that was often written across a bill when it had been paid in full. His resurrection is all the proof we need that those in whose place he died can never be asked again to pay sin's debt. As the 20th century American theologian Donald Gray Barnhouse put it, the resurrection of Christ is our receipted bill. The person in whose place Jesus died can never be asked to pay the bill again.